Thank you for joining this webinar on Extender Developer. My name is Natalie, and today Anne and I will go through Extender Developer. Last month, we presented Extender Configurator and its latest offering, the Remote Action Service. This month, we're now sharing how consultants can use Extender Developer to tailor Sage 300. So we will look at kind of customizations you can do using Extender and Python scripts. And for this, we will go through a video which is about 30 minutes long, which presents a series of examples around validation, automating business processes, creating table, customizing screens. We will then demonstrate 3 sample modules that we recently released following questions we've had in the last few weeks. So we would like to start with a quick poll of attendees to help us focus the second half of the presentation. So the first poll is questions your exposure on Extender Configurator. So I'm going to start this now. You can choose as many answers as are applicable. So I'll give you 20, 30 seconds to answer. So thanks for answering that first question. I'm going to close this first poll and ask you similar type of questions on Extender Developer. So select as many options as are applicable. And we will then review the results and talk about this after the video. And for those of you who have had no exposure to Extender, either configurator or developer, hopefully you will, this is not a technical presentation, so you will get a lot of ideas about what you can do with Extender. So thanks for answering. I'm going to close this poll and move on to the video. Thank you for watching this video where we looked at various examples of customizations using Extender Developer. Most of them are configured in our ORCID 2020 sample data that's available on the website, as well as a lot of those scripts and modules are available in the Extender script section. So now we're going to look at more closely at 3 new Extender sample modules that we've just recently made available. But before we do that, we'll briefly share the poll results about the attendees. So let's start with configurator, where we see, a quarter of you have no exposure to Extender at all. So hopefully you found that interesting and got some ideas. It's great to see that many of you have attended workflow webinars, our latest offering, which is about a year old now, and we're really excited about that. And if we now have a look at developer, sort of similar, many of you have looked at the sample scripts and the sample data, and good proportions have worked with developers to implement Extender customizations or work on quotes and specifications. So we're going to address some of this in the rest of the presentation. And for those of you with no exposure at all, we're going to show you a few sample scripts to start with that are, powerful yet very simple to get going with. So also answer a couple of questions that that came up before we move on to the rest of the presentation. First one is that there are no special prerequisites to run Extender, no special modules you have to have with it. You just need a supported version of Sage 300. And we are showing a lot of examples of using Extender with other modules, with other ORCID modules like Notes or Document Management Link or Process Scheduler or EFT, but this is not a prerequisite. Similarly, you can run Extender if you don't use optional fields in Sage 300 to create your own custom tables. If you want to use the script that we demonstrated where you're showing the Sage 300 optional fields on the grid rather than through the normal Sage interface, you do need to have the optional fields in Sage 300 configured. Final questions that we've had so far is about sending the, we have showed an example of using a button to email customer or vendors. If you have multiple email addresses, Extender can support multiple contacts. We will be releasing a sample script to do that in the near future, because it's one that we would like to use internally as well when we send invoices and order confirmations and renewals to you. So now we're going to look at three examples. And the first one is on data validation. So the scenario is that only admin and Steve can convert OE quotes and orders, and all other users can only enter quotes in OE. To achieve this with Extender, we use a view script. We're including the view script in a module for ease of deployment, so that the module will include your script as well as being attached to the correct OE header view in Sage 300. And it includes an example of defaulting some value by user, being the order template and the order type, and also a validation on the template and order type field. So now I'm going to hand over to Anne to do the presentation.
Thanks, Natalie. So the first new module that I'm going to show you is the ability to control who enters orders or quotes and to default the template accordingly. So on our website, if you're not familiar with how to download the Extender sample scripts or sample modules, first you need to log in, then you go to the resources, and then on the Extender scripts page, you will see a whole lot of Extender scripts for the different modules within Sage 300. You can filter by product or module, so I'm going to filter by order entry, and the first one I'm going to demonstrate to you is this one, the OE order type and template default validation. So when you download one of these sample modules, you'll get probably, most likely, a zip file with a Word document in explaining how it all works and what you need to do to test, as well as a VI file, which is an Extender module, or a PY file, which is just an Extender script. So when I downloaded that file, the module that was extracted is this OE order validate and default. So .vi is an Extender module. So it could be multiple scripts, table definitions, email templates, workflow templates, etc. Or it could be just a single PY file if we've chosen to deploy it just as a script, thinking that you want to include that perhaps in one of your own modules. So this is the module that I'm going to import. So back in my Sage 300, logged in as administrator, I'm going to import that module. So when you import a module, it brings in the scripts that are associated with it, creates any tables if there are any tables associated with it, and attach them to wherever it needs to attach them. So this particular module, I know, consists of just one script, which is this one, the OE order quote validate. So this script is applied to the order header view, and it's the one that validates who's logged in and what they can do when creating orders. So when creating or amending orders. So at the same time that the script was imported, it also attached it to the order entry view, to the order header view. So on the order header view, it is attached the script and it is active. So importing the module, you can see, makes the deployment of your customizations very easy, because it's just one click to import it into the company, and it does all the necessary components that it needs to do. So now when I go to, no, I need to log in as Anne because I'm logged in as admin. And I should have shown you that script just before I demonstrate how it works. So not that this is intended for developer training, but just to show you this particular script. What it has is some variables up the top, a list of valid users. So when we use this a valid user list variable in the script, it's saying either admin or Steve, and we could add more users in here. The default quote template is 1, and the default active template is active. And you could change these to suit your own environment as you need to. Or, if more appropriate, you might have said instead of using a valid user list, you might actually want to create your own table and have the list of users in there. It's more flexible than changing the code when you need a new user. And you might even want to associate default quote templates with those users and put it in the table. But this is just a very simple script. It's got some variables for our users and our default quote template. And here, this piece of coding here, which is really the only active bit is this, is if the field type, when it's working on putting the type field onto the screen, if the user is not in the valid user list, then make it non-editable. So logged in as Anne, I will not be able to change the type. And the other piece of active script is here, is when you're putting a value into the template field, if the user is in the valid user list, i.e. Steve or admin, then let them change it. If it's not, and they selected a value which is not in our or it's not equal to 1 in our case, our default quote template, then give them an error and don't let them do it. So because I'm logged in as Anne, when I run the OE screen, I think I forgot to show you as well. So Anne can't change the order type, and Anne also can only create quotes. So I forgot to show you that piece of code. So when Anne creates a new order, and because my template 1 is changing the tax code, it creates an order for, I get that normal standard OE warning, and enters a new order, you can see it's automatically become a quote, and I can't change that, and the template code is 1, and if I try and select a different template code, because I'm not Steve or admin, I really can't change that order template code either. So that's really what I wanted to show you from this order entry view script, which is controlling at a view level what happens on the OE screen when you're entering orders. And this would flow through to the web screens as well. So on the web screens, if the user was Anne, she would not be able to change the order type and should only be able to create quotes with the template code of 1. So I'm just going to hand back to Natalie to introduce the next example.
Thank you, Anne. So we've seen how to import the module. If you were to import that into your test database, you'd have to create an OE template or change it, and then amend the user list in the script. Variation of this would include using a parameter configured in view events and scripts instead of a list of users in the script. Similarly for the default quote template, which may make it easier to move from one site to another. You can also use a custom table to link users and default templates. Or you could also extend that code to default the OE template based on the Sage security profile, or not based on the user, but based on some customer's attribute. Our next scenario is around hiding fields on screens in Grid and in a pop-up. So the client wants to hide the detailed comment field on an AP invoice, both in the Grid and on the pop-up screens. This uses a UI subclass script, so it applies to the particular screen, the Sage desktop screen, and I will show you some tips to find the control name for using the same script or similar script in on other Sage 300 grids. So I'm going to hand over back to Anne.
Thanks, Natalie. So the next two examples that I'm going to show you are both accounts payable examples. So just going back to our sample scripts page and selecting the accounts payable module, the two I'm going to show you is this one. First, the AP invoice screen, where we're going to hide the comment field out of the grid and on the pop-up. And this AP vendor auto numbering. So we're going to show you how you can auto number a master file, in this case, vendors. So previously I've downloaded both these two sample scripts, and they're in my directory here. So the invoice change to hide the comment on in the two places is just a PY file. So this is an example where we've just given you a PY file, assuming that you might want to, include this in your own module or just load it up just to see how it works. So it's not a full-blown module. So in order to import a PY file, you use the script screen. So if I go to Extender Scripts, and I'll import that particular file. But before I import it and activate my screen changes, I just want to show you the AP invoice screen at the moment. So the AP invoice screen, as you know, when you have a vendor, the grid becomes active and the grid has a comment. And on the account tax, you've got a comment. And this is the field that we're hiding in the extender screen script that I'm just about to import and show you how it works. So when you do customizations to screens, you can use the customize, and you can amend hide some of the header fields, but you can't really hide grid fields. People can selectively hide it, but there's nothing to stop them, resetting the default and getting that field back. So, you can use this customize button and you can find out, hide certain fields. So if I wanted to hide the whole grid, I could do it like that. But from this, I know that that grid is called AVL AP IBD. So I can use it to know what field I need to customize, or what the grid is called that I need to customize. But there's no customize when you come to the pop-up, and there's no way of knowing what that grid field is. So I'm going to import that particular Python script. So going back to my extender setup and going to the scripts tab, I can upload a script. So a screen script, the convention that we use as a screen script, needs to have the screen code or roto ID, and you can find that out by right-hand mouse buttoning on the appropriate screen and seeing what the roto ID is. So AP invoice entry is AP2100. So because I've called the script AP2100, and in fact the first row of the script is also AP2100, this screen is going to be active when the AP2100 screen opens up. But first time round, because Sage reads your roto as you're logging in, and that's the available screens and subclasses that you have, first time round, after importing a module, you need to reopen the desktop for a screen script to be active. So now when I go to my AP invoice batch list, and I'll just key in a vendor number so the grid becomes active, you'll see that the comment field has now been hidden, and I'll show you the code that we did to do that. But also, when I click on the pop-up, we've put in some message boxes which shows us the pop-up name, so we know what the pop-up's called, so we can change it, and also shows me all the controls that are on the pop-up. So now I know to hide the comment, I need to hide this field, and to hide the comments label, I need to hide this field. So it is a bit of guesswork, but at least I know what all those controls are called. And when I get to the pop-up, you can see the comment, both the label and the comment has been hidden. And if I open up the script, you can see we're doing some work around the AVL APIBD, which is the grid, and we're saying the comment show column is false, and that's what hides the comment. Then we're also doing some work when the pop-up is opened, And the first thing we're doing is showing a message box which shows us what the pop-up name is, and that was the little message box that showed me that the pop-up was called form detail. So that's how I know. I'd comment that out if I was giving this to the client to run now, but that's how I know that the pop-up was called form detail. And then on the form detail, we're saying the label IBD comment dot hide and the text IBD comment dot hide. And this is the message box that built up all the controls and showed us all the fields that was on the pop-up. So I'd also comment that out, or comment all of that out if I didn't need it anymore. But that shows you, how easy it is to hide a field. You just need to know the field name and say .hide, and also how you can hide out of a grid as well. You just make it the column not visible.
So while you're on that screen script, and maybe show us right at the top how you can add a comment in the script that people can see from the Sage UI.
So I'm using an editor called Notepad++, which makes my comments lines green and my functions blue and pink and so on. So I recommend you use a recognized editor. But all these green lines here are comments. And when we were on the script screen, we see the first 5 or 6 lines of the comments. So it's good to put your main details here so people don't even have to open up the script to see what's going on. And a screen script needs to have both the roto ID in the name, but also positions 5 to 8 needs to be the roto ID. So if I wanted this no longer to be active, all I need to do is put a few more hashes on that line, or just one more hash, just make sure that the positions 5 to 8 is not the actual roto ID, and that would comment out that script. So if you ever need to deactivate a screen script, just put a few hashes in the before the roto ID name, and that would save it and check that back in. And that would, in effect, comment out that screen change.
Thank you, Anne. So we've seen how to import a script. Happens to be a UI script, and we run it with a show message box to find the control names, seeing how we can comment things out to disable the script. Variations of that include basically a very similar script to hide, for example, the average cost on the IC location details, or the tracking field on the OE detail grid and the OE detail pop-up, or to hide only for certain users or certain user groups. And there is a knowledge base article on how to what logic to follow to change what you need to change, and I think it will most likely be in the newsletter that you will receive in the next couple of days. So I realize we're almost running out of time, and we still want one example to go and a few other implementation tips. So hopefully you still can spare us 5 minutes. Apologies for this, but hopefully you find that useful. So next scenario is around auto numbering. In our example, AP vendors. So that includes both a view script that actually does the numbering and a UI script to make sure that when you open the AP vendor screen, it defaults to star, 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 new, star, 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 in line with other Sage screens that auto number. And it also includes an extended table to store your configuration parameter, to have a structure similar to an OE one, where you've got your prefix, your total length, and your next number. So I'll hand over back to Anne to demonstrate this script.
Thanks, Natalie. So I'm going to import the module for the vendor auto renumbering, and here's my VI file, and import that. And this time it's imported and created a table, and it's imported 2 scripts, both the view script to do the renumbering on the vendors, as well as the screen script to default star, 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 new. So if I look at my scripts tab, it was already open, so let me just open that again. If I look at my scripts tab, I've got two new ones, part of the AP Vend auto renumber, AP 1200. So that is the screen script that defaults *** new into the vendor ID field. And this is the view script, which does the actual work of defaulting the new number when a new vendor is created, calculates and puts it into the vendor field. It has attached the view script to the AP vendor view. So we now have this attached and it is active. And it also created a table. So if I go to the custom table editor, I have this AP auto number table. The table is called VI AP Next. And if I go to my database, my company database, this will be created in the company database with the same SQL credentials as all your other Sage 300 tables in this particular company, ORCT. And the fields, it's got a key, it's got the prefix. So what do you want the vendor prefix to be? What is the next number? And what is the length of the field, that the vendor number field that you want? And if I go to the table editor, I'm able to create a new record and add that I want to have my vendor prefix, let's say as a VEN, and my first number is going to be 1. And I'm going to make my total vendor number length 8. Now remember, with screen scripts, you need to reopen your desktop. So I'm just going to reopen. And I should go, when I go to my AP vendor screen, when it opens up, I see it's pasted in *** new for me. So I'm going to create a new vendor, assign it a group, and create add. And you can see it's called it vendor 401. And if I go back to my my table, as you would hope, my next number is sitting here as 2. So handing back to Natalie for the conclusion or for the summaries.
Thank you, Anne. So we've seen how to import this module to do auto numbering, which is a view and a screen script, and how to use a configuration table to store the details, and the script actually keep populating those details. Variation, obviously, that you can use this to change the way you auto number. Maybe you have a key by vendor groups, that you have different numbers by vendor group, and you can auto number other records that are not in Sage, typically auto numbered in Sage 300, like customers or multiple contacts. Or you could enhance auto numbering of documents. For example, auto number your orders based on the user or based on the customer group. We've looked at quite a few examples, and we know that as a consultant, we often ask questions like, can Sage 300 do this? And in our world, that translates as, can you do this with Extender? Can Extender do this? And while the answer is often yes, sometimes the request is just too complicated, has too many permutations or what if scenarios, and it can't really be implemented because we can't really bypass completely the Sage business logic. We've got to build on it. And we don't like to admit it. So before we reach the conclusion that we can't do something or that we can do something, we generally like to ask a range of qualifying questions. And also, there are often various ways of implementing the requirements. So the first step for us is often to go through a detailed walkthrough to clarify all the assumptions and make sure that the process we're trying to automate, including potential approvals and acknowledgements, is clearly documented. We look at the sample scripts, we might try out a few things, and then go through a range of qualifying questions. And these qualifying questions have been built over the last few years. In particular, thanks Rob and Scott and Chris for your feedback on this. And that includes, what other ORCID modules do you use or do you intend to use, like notes or document management link? Do you need time-based alerts or exception notifications, in which case you would often consider process scheduler? Does your documented process include approvals, acknowledgements, and in particular, when workflow is a requirement, how many users will you need? Is there a need for users to participate in the workflow without logging into Sage 300? And then we can look at remote action. And some questions that are very useful in terms of planning the project and implementing is what third-party modules are installed? What other customizations need to be considered in the design and the testing? Extender works with most third-party modules developed in the SDK, but because they interact with Sage 300, we need to know about it to include them in the design and the testing. How many companies need Extender activated in, which obviously has an impact in the implementation time? Do you have a test server and test database available? How is Sage 300 installed on the terminal server, local installs, etc.? And is the customer running a supported version? While Extender supports prior versions of Sage 300, it exists. It's really difficult to quote and test scripts on unsupported versions because the older versions of Extender may not include all the features that you require. For example, the ability to hide fields on a pop-up that we looked at earlier on is only available in the latest product updates of Extender, which means a supported version. So these are the questions that you will see from us or from Rob and his team to help work on the project. So to get started, you can look at a lot of training material and demos that are available on the Extender page. We have the sample scripts that we have looked at, and we regularly publish new modules based on requests that we get, and they're often promoted in the monthly newsletter. And we also have the online help that we recently introduced as part of getting ready for our 2021 release. And of course, you can always contact Rob or us on support@orchid.systems. So thanks a lot for your time, and apologies for running a little bit over time, especially just before your dinner time. But let's see now if we have a few questions. Do we have service to train consultants? We to introduce customization with Extender. That is a great idea. I think we can build on what we were attempting to do in this webinar, and document some of these qualifying questions in the knowledge base. Also have a series of troubleshooting steps and installation steps specifically for consultants installing Extender modules. So while we don't have anything very formal on that at the moment, I think that's a great idea. So we'll work on that in the next few sort of weeks and months. Thanks, Oscar. The auto numbering was referred to as a module that can be imported. Does that mean that you can run it with Extender runtime? Thanks for that question on runtime versus developer. No, it doesn't mean that. The fact that this auto numbering AP vendor is as a module, to run it, you still need to run Extender developer because it includes a custom table and a range of custom scripts. Runtime is specifically for third-party apps for Extender that are developed in conjunction with a either business partner or another provider. So a good example of that is the DemoMaint connector. If all you want to do with Sage 300 is run the DemoMaint connector, you can get runtime for DemoMaint, and you can run anything that's built into that particular module. But we don't have a module for AP vendor numbering, so you would still need Extender developer to run that module. So hopefully that clarifies. Thanks for your feedback, Mark, and of course everyone, if you have if you have any other questions, get back to us. Can we customize the OE ship to pop-up with a finder to select the state? Now that we have more ways to deal with the pop-ups, we will revisit that one, Jaime. Thanks for reminding us. So we don't have it as a sample at the moment, but we will have a look at it and see if that can be done, because not all pop-ups are all exactly the same. So if in doubt about a specific screen or a specific pop-up, you can ask us and we can then see if there's something inherent in it that we can't work with it, or if there's something we can do to make it work. I can't see any more questions, so unless you, if you want to add something, Anne or Steve, anyone?
No, I don't have any other questions to answer or any other comments, but thanks very much for your feedback, everyone, and for attending this webinar today. Have a good evening.
Speak to you later. Bye. And we'll send you the recording soon.